for you. Choose wisely. Have you been distressed or perplexed? Emasculated. A book written by Edward Fields IV. Everything that needs to be known about men in modern time. Listen, men are not complex. They are misunderstood and unappreciated. Learn what men really feel, think, and desire. Also observe their struggle for acceptance, love, and belonging. A must read for every man in this classic book by Edward Fields IV. Emasculated. Go get your copy now.
I told you guys last night, okay? All right, come out and play according to our DNA. All right? And that last element of our DNA is what? That's what you guys did today. That's what you guys did today. All right? The one thing I told you last night, man, I respect the hell out of this group right here. All the adversity that you guys have gone through all this year, all the different it's, and you found a way to circle the wagons and come together and win one more. Yes, that's what it's all about. All right, we had guys down. All right, guys stepped up. Barno and special teams came up with a help. I got one ball right here. Eddie Williams!
I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much, man, through the adversity, and love you guys, man.
Turning now to big breaking sports news. The Carolina Panthers have a brand new head coach.
There he is. His name is Frank Reich. Kate Rogerson joining us now with more on this big new deal for the Panthers. Kate?
Frank Reich, the first ever quarterback to play for the Carolina Panthers in 1995, is coming back to Carolina. The Panthers agreed to terms with Frank Reich to make him the 6th head coach in franchise history. Now, the Panthers centered their head coaching search around ways to address that quarterback position and how they can fix the offensive side of the ball. According to reports, there were 9 different candidates for the job. It came down to Reich and former interim head coach Steve Wilkes. Reich's offensive-minded approach made him the right guy for the job. Reich comes to Carolina after getting fired mid-season by the Colts. In each of his seasons at Indianapolis, the Colts had 5 different quarterbacks. And part of the reason behind that dismissal was simply because of the fact that the Colts could not find their own franchise quarterback. Reich will have his hands full trying to complete that same task in Charlotte. Now
ice in my palm. My girl, she know she the one. I put the ice on her hand, I put some ice on her arm. See me shining in the light, know you found me in the dark. Talking how you wanna leave, girl, you made this far. Taking trips overseas, no, I won't be long. We came up from the weeds, now it's top floor. All these big gas on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and I don't stress, when I make it stretch. Double back to back then, down broke, now we rich. Spend it on her, let her spin, down with me to the end. That my best friend, that my best friend, that my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. Spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. There for my first cake, then we hit 100K. $500,000 on the way, then $1 million on the way. Eating good full plates, eating good, say grace. Eat her up, get thanks. She got cake birthday. I can't waste no way, I can't waste no play. My girl, whoa, whoa, something like the baddest chick. My girl, whoa, whoa, came from the rags to rich. Hit the road running, I had to tell her I had to get it. She understood, but she spoiled, so when she get mad, she dip. All these big gas on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and I don't stress, when I make it stretch. Double back to back then, down broke, now we rich. Spend it on her, let her spin, down with me to the end. That my best friend, that my best friend, that my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. Spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. All these big gas on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and I don't stress, when I make it stretch. Double back to back then, down broke, now we rich. Spend it on her, let her spin, down with me to the end. That my best friend, that my best friend, that my best friend. I'ma spend it on her, cause she all mine. All these big gas on her wrist, VVS is on her neck. Make it spin and I don't stress, spend it on a challenge, cause she all mine. That my best friend, that my best friend, that my best friend.
All right, guys, we're going to have a good show on tonight. A great show. We're going to be brief, but at the same point, be very relevant. As we talk about the fiasco with Steve Wilks, we're going to be asking ourselves the question on tonight. Can you guys hear me? We're going to be asking ourselves the question on tonight. Was Steve Wilks treated fairly? And if he was not treated fairly, we're going to ask ourselves the question, is racism a problem in the NFL? And if it is a problem in the NFL, how does it impact the mental health of men, especially black men? And then afterwards, we're going to have a call-in show where we have the panelists come up, some brothers come up and talk about it, and more or less explore the pros and the cons. Get ready as I'm about to drop some fire for your mind. Do it. For your mind. Listen. All right, guys, we're going to have a great show on tonight. I will be brief. I will not be before you guys long, but I want to talk about the current situation with Steve Wilks. Frank Reich, if you guys are Panther fans, Frank Reich was hired as the Panthers head coach. Frank Reich's hiring has caused a lot of consternation, a lot of people, especially those of the African extract. Based on the polls, I asked the 13 that voted, did Panthers do Steve Wilks wrong? Some would say yes. 92% said that he was did wrong. Turn this thing off.
How do we remedy guys going forward if he was done wrong? Hold tight. Let me check this audio. I got an audio issue. Hold on. Hold tight. All right, here we go. All right. So what do you guys think about the hiring of Frank Reich? And what do you guys think about Steve Wilks not getting the job? And is this just something that happens all the time? Is this something that you feel that black men continue to go through and black men continue to struggle with? And then when you think about what happened between Frank Reich and Steve Wilks, Is this something that you went through on a regular basis and something that you continue to struggle with? And also, is it safe to say that the NFL has a problem with racism? You know and I know that, sadly, race plays a very major role in the mental health of men. And some would say that it had nothing to do with race, but based on the evidence, it appears that others can do similar or same jobs and still get head coaching positions. But if you look at Eric Bieniemy never got a job as a head coach. Who's the other coach? Caldwell didn't get a job as a head coach. And you would think that what Steve Wilks did with what he had, it should have been sufficient enough to give Steve Wilks the job. So that's a problem, guys, for many. That's a problem for many. And many are frustrated because they feel that Steve Wilks got the boot. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Is it safe to say this is just race baiting? Are people, especially those of African descent, taking things out of context? Or do you think that some of these owners have an unconscious issue or unconscious pathology of racism, and many of them don't know or understand that they have it? So hold tight, guys. We're going to read through it, and you guys tell me what you think. Because I personally was disappointed by it. I thought that Steve Wilks should have got the job. I felt that Steve Wilks did enough to get the job. And according to some pundits, some said that Steve Wilks was the third choice instead of the first choice. The second choice. They said that Kellen Moore was a candidate for the head coaching position before Steve Wilks. And if that's the case, that's a problem. And does it more or less open up the wounds that many times black people feel like they come in the process of being stewards? Or are those, especially the lawyer, taking this out of context? Or just another attempt that some would say that black people are using the race card? So guys, do me a favor, share this stream, share this content, and we're going to break this thing down. We're going to talk about Steve Wilks, Frank Reich becoming the head coach of the Carolina Panthers. If you guys know anything about the Carolina Panthers, Frank Reich played with the Buffalo Bills when they went and won went on to go to 3 Super Bowls. They never won one. And Frank Reich was one of the first quarterbacks back in '95 that started the epigenesis of the Carolina Panthers. But the question remains, do black men, especially and particularly, feel like their good is never enough? Because we've always said before in the past, when it comes down to black men and their abilities, that we got to work twice as hard, and some will argue the same for black women as well. So is this another race card attempt? Or do you think that some of these owners are more comfortable with hiring people that look like them? And then some would say that, he got a cheerleader, a black cheerleader that's trans or gay. But some could argue that that's not a power position. Many coaches don't want black men in power positions. Many could argue that. And some could argue also that it's an unconscious pathology or racism. And when that happens, what it does, it festers old wounds that black men have been through and more or less let them think that they're not good enough. Now, some will say, well, the league is 90% black. Well, what does that say if the league is 90% black? It just say that based on the servant role of serving the owners, then they're good enough. But when it comes down to power, then they're not good enough. For years, guys, you know and I know that black quarterbacks were not deemed to be intelligent. They weren't deemed to be intelligent. And black coaches are rare or even rarer. So we know that there's a race issue. Even though the Rooney Rule has been existing and is existing, some will say it's not enough, and it's just a manner or a way to appease the Rooney Rule. But many of these owners don't have any attempt to hire black candidates. Now, let me say this. I'm not one to spew the race card. I don't necessarily believe in that. I don't believe everything is racialized, but there is unconscious pathology of racism. And sometimes when people are more comfortable with their own people, they hire. There could be unconscious racism. I don't think that Steve, what's his name, Temper is a bona fide racist. I don't think he is. But then again, I don't know. Steve Wilks did a great job with what he had. He took a team that was 1-4. They gave Matt Rule two opportunities, and his record was subpar. When he went to Arizona, he wasn't given the optimal chance. And then you would have thought they would have at least hired him. Frank Reich was 3-5 when he was fired. But why couldn't Steve Wilkes get a full-time or full position? The players are rooting for him. And even though I like Frank Reich, and I think he's a great choice, I still felt that Steve Wilkes should have gotten this job, and I feel like he did enough. So we're going to read the evidence, guys, and you tell me what y'all think over this Steve Wilkes fiasco. And some think it's good old boy politics. I think it could be as well. I'm going to have a call-in show at some point, guys. We can drop the mic and y'all can come on and talk and give me your points. But let's look at it, guys. Let's look at it and break it down, guys. And do me a favor, donate to the channel if you're not donated, and share this stream and share the content. But in the meantime, let's look at the evidence. And guys, this is the part of the show where we do this whole tape. Down the rabbit hole we go. This is the part of the show where we assess, examine, collaborate. All right, so let me pull this up, and we're going to read what the pundits say about Steve Wilkes. And I tend to agree in part with what USA Today is saying. You guys tell me what y'all think. We're going to have an after show. I'm going to drop the link, and you guys can come on and give me and share what you think about it. Is racism a problem in the NFL? If racism is a problem in the NFL, what does that mean as it relates to the mental health of black men? Does that more or less reopen wounds that they are inferior and not good enough? We know that black coaches are as good, in some ways better. We know that the black athlete plays a major role in these NFL owners making money. But once again, I think there's a struggle with white men sometimes, not all, when it comes down to power. Good enough to serve, but not good enough to lead or own. And sometimes it's not conscious. Sometimes they're not consciously doing it. But then some will argue that Frank Reich was just a better offensive mind, a better offensive guru. And I take that in consideration. But I still think that there's an issue when it comes down to putting black coaches in a position and putting black coaches on the mantle of hope and change. So let's redo this real quick, guys, so y'all tell me what y'all think. Steve Wilkes' lawyer said that there's a legitimate race problem in the NFL after Panthers' Frank Reich was hired over him. As interim coach, Steve Wilkes took a 1-4 Panthers team that just traded Christian McCaffrey back into the playoff contention, going 6-6 in the team's final 12 games. On Thursday, the Panthers announced the hiring of Frank Reich to be the next head coach. Windor LLP represents Wilkes and representing Brian Flores in the race discrimination lawsuit against the NFL after the former Miami Dolphins head coach said he felt that the front office were interviewing black candidates simply to fulfill the Rooney Rule rather than give them a serious shot at any opportunities. And I believe that. Some will say that how can I say it? What is it called? I forgot the name. Anyway, but anything, affirmative action did not benefit black men, but it benefited white women. And some will also argue that many of these coaches don't have any pure intentions when they come down to hiring black coaches. Steve Wilkes did a phenomenal job with what he had. He traded Christian McCaffrey. He got rid of Robbie Anderson. And he got rid of a couple other people, got rid of coaches as well. And he should have been given the opportunity to be the head coach. They could have got a high-power offense coordinator. Even though, once again, I like Frank Reich, I think Steve Wilkes was not given the opportunity to be head coach. To be an intern, some will argue, is good enough. And even though David Tepper is his team, he can do what he wants to do with his team. If black people are good enough to make you money, then black folks should be good enough to make you, or more or less, be a head coach. You can't tell me out of the damn 32 teams, Eric Bieniemy haven't gotten a job. He's helped Kansas City win a Super Bowl. Coaches with lesser records can still get a job, but black coaches with average or better records, they got to jump through hoops just to get a job. You can't convince me that there's not a racialized component to some degree. I'm not saying all of it's racial, but I think there is an underlying racialized component. And I'm one that don't necessarily believe and using the race card 100%. After Wright was hired, despite Wilkes going to a second interview with Carolina to drop the intern tag, the law firm ripped the Panthers for their decision. We are shocked and disturbed that after the incredible job Wilkes did as an interim coach, including bringing the team back into playoff contention and garnering the support of players and fans, that he was passed over for the head coaching position, David Tepper said in a statement obtained by Fox News Digital. This is what Wilkes' lawyer said. He said there's a legitimate race problem in the NFL, and we can assure you that we will have more to say about this in the coming days. Now, of course, this lawyer got a lot of feedback. And listen, if you don't live the experience of black people, then you won't understand it. And I'm not one to always use the race card as a justification for people not getting jobs. But racism still does exist. Black men in power is a threat because some whites, not all, but some, see black men as inferior. And then when they see black men, they can do as good or better. Then what it does, it demythifies the element or the issue of racial white supremacy, where they say that they're superior. So what it does, it causes them to crack, because in their mind, they don't think black men can do the job. They didn't think black men could be quarterbacks. They didn't think black men could do whatever. And so we got to talk about this, because the reason why people don't want to talk about it, because they know it exists. You have to talk about it, and you have to more or less explore all the contingency factors to this. According to wing door law, and we understand that there are some lawyers that are ambulance chase. I understand that. But we got to look at the research, man. We are shocked and incredibly disturbed that after the incredible job that Steve Wilkes did as coach, including bringing the team back to playoff contention and garnering support of players and fans, he was passed over. Hold tight. Hold tight. I don't know, I can't find it. All right, anyway, I got it. Let me see. All right, he was passed over for the head coaching by David Tepper. Several players spoke very highly of him. Let me make sure I'm on the screen, because I can't see on different screens. Okay. All right, several players spoke very highly of him, but Derek Brown saying that everyone wanted him back. I'll speak for everyone in that locker room. We want Coach Wilkes to be our next head coach, that's for sure. He told Good Morning Football. The Texans GM had two coaches, guys. We all know about that. And they fired both of those black coaches back to back. Wright was fired as the Indianapolis coach midway through season after a 3-5 start in 2021. The coach lost their final two games to maybe miss out on the playoffs. Wright was the quarterback to take a snap for the Carolina Panthers when they became an expansion team in 1995. He went 40-33-1 with the Colts, which was his first head coaching gig. The 61-year-old offense coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles during their Super Bowl run as well. While the Texans firing of Lovie Smith was right at the end of the season, Pittsburgh Steelers Mike Tomlin is the only black coach in the NFL. And you guys mean to tell me out of 32 teams that only one black head coach is in the NFL? That makes no sense to me. Wilkes was fired from Arizona in 2019 after one season and was replaced by Cliff Kingsbury, who was just let go. So Cliff Kingsbury, that had a lesser record and a lesser profile and a lesser background, was hired as a head coach. And Wilkes was more or less fired after his first year, only 1 year, and wasn't given a second chance. And so the adage always goes back that black folks got to always work harder, and they got to always work more to prove themselves, because I think as a therapist that some of it is the unconscious pathology of racism. As I said before, I'm not one to push the race card for all things. I think sometimes people overuse it, but I think it does play a role. So hold tight. Let me look at this other screen, then we can break it down. I don't know if it's the same one. Okay, so this article is by US Today. And they say, nice job. Steve Wilks is another black interim coach shown the door. So before we continue, guys, do you guys think that there's a race problem in the NFL? Shout out to my man Griff for the $10 super chat. Thank you, Griff. I appreciate it, brother. Some say there is a problem. The word interim is loose for black coaches. No matter how well they do, it's never good enough. Right. I see the sentiment. The guy from Miami Dolphins is a quarter black. Right. Well, whether he's quarter black or not, he's seen as black. But anyway, I'm going to drop the link at some point, guys. We're going to have a call-in show. And let's talk about race and how race plays a role on the psyche of black men. But hold tight, because I could be wrong. But I want to hear from some of the pundits. Nice job. Get out. Steve Wilks is another black interim coach shown the door. The Panthers bypass interim coach Steve Wilks and hire Frank Reich. It's another example of black head coaches getting passed over. When the Carolina Panthers reached out with an agreement to Frank Reich, thus replacing Steve Wilks. Hold tight. It continued a disturbing trend. The last black coach retained full-time with the same team was Romeo Crennel with the Kansas City in 2011. Not 2020, not 2015, but 2011. There have been several other black interns, including Wilks, during that time. Another, Anthony Lynn, was hired full-time after one game as an interim stint with the Bills in 2016, but was with a different team, the Chargers. So it looks like to me that even when they do hire black coaches, they're under a microscope, and they got to really prove that they're good enough. They're not giving the same grace, it appears, that some will appear, as white coaches. And for a league where it's mostly black coaches or black players, you would think they would be given the same amount of grace. And once again, owners have the right to hire who they want to hire, but at the same time, if many of your constituents are making you money as black, then you would think they say, you know what, I'm going to give people that they can more or less look like them the opportunity to lead in power. But some will argue that some white owners, because they see it based on power, don't think the black coaches are fit or more or less to lead in those areas. This means if you make apples to apples comparison, it's been 12 years since a black intern was retained full-time, even with Lynn in a slightly different situation. That's 7 years, a lifetime in the NFL. And it's unfortunate, guys, because many of the Panthers players wanted Steve Wilks to be the coach. They wanted Steve Wilks to be the coach. That piece of data, while nuance, illustrates one of the biggest issues with the NFL still when it comes to race and coaching. There remains a racial blockade for black interim coaches. Black coaches can be temporary stewards, but don't seem to be viewed by many owners and general managers good enough to go beyond that. What do you guys think about that? Because I think there's some truth to that. Good enough just to be the placards until we get the person that we think is suitable enough to lead our organization. So, NFL owner, here are the keys to the franchise. Congratulations. Black interim coach, thank you. NFL, just make sure they're in place when we can find them after, say, week 17. Black coach, okay. NFL owner, actually, we want to hold the keys. We want to hold those keys for you. It's also unfair to note that many, if not all, interim black coaches have slim odds of being retained. But it's particularly worse for black coaches, despite them having won marginally more games since 2000, but retained at a slightly lower rate. And that says something, in my opinion. We can continue to act like a race problem does not exist, but once again, I think there is some unconscious pathology of racism. Do I think some of these owners are bona fide racists? I don't know, but we do know that Jerry Jones was complicit and racial issues in the past based on pictures. Once again, good enough to serve, but not good enough to lead in power, which is a problem. Hold tight. Since 2000, there have been 41 interim coaching stints following a firing or resignation. Only 14 did lead their teams to a record of 500 or better. Of those 14, 9 were not retained. Of the 14 interim coaching stints featuring 15 black coaches and 26 white coaches, black coaches combined for 33 of 53. White coaches were combined of 57 to 119. Wright guided the Colts to the playoffs twice and isn't really about him. He's qualified for a coach, but the point is Wilkes is too, and that's true. This would have been a good time to hire what looks like a talented coach who took the orbital degree that was left of the pulverized and talent-deprived franchise that traded its best player away in Christian McCaffrey and take a shot. And I agree, the players wanted them, the fans wanted them. You could have hired the offensive coordinator to come in, but once again, racism, whether it's intentional or not, it can cause mental distress for people or black men. I've been through it, and I'm sure some of you men that are listening have been through it. Once again, I'm not saying that everything is racism. I'm not saying that. I'm not one to always talk about the race card. Some overuse it. But we do know that historically, black men have not always been treated appropriately when it came down to power positions in the NFL. We cannot deny that. And I think the problem is those that have not been more or less been denigrated, they'll say, well, it has nothing to do with race. You don't know what it has to do with it. Because on the flip side, if there were black owners and there was, say, black people own, say, 10% of the NFL, but they never gave white coaches a similar chance or long-term chance, then it would be a problem. And what's been seen in many cases that teams don't want to take that leap when the coach is black. We are shocked and disturbed that after the incredible job the Coach Wilkes did as the interim coach, including to bring the team back into playoff contention and garner the support of players and fans, he was passed over for the head coaching position by David Tepper. Attorney John F. Lafracassis, Douglas H. Wigger, who represents Wilkes, said in a statement, "There is a legitimate race problem in the NFL, and we can assure you that we have more to say in the coming days." What do you guys think about this lawsuit? Do you think what they're saying is true? What do you guys think about what these lawyers are saying? And do you guys think that's true? And you're right. Bieniemy is one of those guys that have been given suitable opportunities, but at the same time, never respected. The lawyers also represent Brian Flores as an assistant coach in Pittsburgh who sued the NFL and accused it of racial discrimination regarding his hiring practices. Wilkes later joined the lawsuit and alleged that after 2008 stint as an interim head coach in Arizona, he was a bridge coach and never had a serious chance of getting the job full time. When reporters asked Wilkes about the suit, he responded, "I'm all about change and I'll leave it at that." And see, what some of y'all don't understand is that many others use black folks to push their agenda, but when it comes down to black people, then no one really pushes their agenda. These liberal groups use black folks as stepping stools to push their agenda. All of them, whether it be LGBTQ, transgenders or whatever, everybody use feminists. Everybody use black folks to push their damn agenda, and black folks, especially black men, are always left at the bottom of the barrel, which is a problem. As I said before earlier, I'm not one to talk about or more or less use the race card primarily. But I would be remiss to say, and or not to think that there's not a race problem in the NFL when it comes down to giving these black coaches suitable chances. We would be dumb not to think that that's not the case. The lawyers also represent Brian Flores, an assistant coach in Pittsburgh who sued the NFL and accused it of racial discrimination regarding his hiring practices. Wilkes did everything you want him to do as an interim to do the job. The locker room was a mess following Matt Rue's fire, and Wilkes was quickly seen by players as a solid leader. The fact he went 6-6 in the final 12 games is one of the true miracles from this year. Carolina was actually in the mix in the late season to win the division. He also had the support of players. If you ask anybody in this locker room, Derek Brown said, "We want Wilkes to be our next head coach." None of this is to say that Wilkes is Don Shula. Wilkes does deserve, however, to represent a historically disconnect, a racial one. So nice job, Steve Wilkes. Now you can leave. And I can definitely see that. Yes, I like Frank Reich because I am a Panther fan. He was the first head coach, first quarterback for the Panthers in '95. But this does pose a problem, guys, in my opinion, when it comes down to, Steve Wilks. What do you guys think about it? I see many different comments. And, guys, I'm going to drop the link in a minute. I'm going to start another show. And we're going to have a live call-in. So if you guys plan to come to the live call-in, let me know. We can have a live call-in. But this was something that was dear on my heart. It bothered me, to say the least, because I was hoping that Steve Wilks would have got an opportunity. I love that helmet right there. I'm a Carolina Panther fan. Been one since 1995. But I will be remiss to say that I'm not disappointed that Steve Wilks was not given the opportunity. So, guys, we're going to have a call-in show. Hold tight. I'm going to end this stream. The next stream, we're going to have a call-in, and we're about to play that in a few minutes. So I'm about to end this stream. You guys can come over in the next 5 or 10 minutes, and we're going to have a call-in show. So I'm going to end this stream, guys, and I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys in a few minutes, all right? And thank you to the brother that donated a minute ago. But this was something that was dear on my heart, guys, something that bothered me. And I thought it was something that we need to talk about because we know that race is a problem, all right? Have you been distressed or perplexed, emasculated? A book written by Edward Fields IV. Everything that needs to be known about men in modern time. Listen, men are not complex. They are misunderstood and unappreciated. Learn what men really feel, think, and desire. Also observe their struggle for acceptance, love, and belonging. A must read for every man in this classic book by Edward Fields IV, Emasculated. Go get your copy now. Before you, choose wisely.